Hello everybody, welcome to the World of Brickfilms podcast. I am your host, William of LOTWStudios. Joining with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Sean Willis of City Panther.
I think I'm starting to lose count of how many Brawl episodes we've done by now.
Oh, I'm trying to think, is it like, I don't know if this is our fourth one or...
I think it must be.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, as many as you've had years, I'd imagine.
But yeah, so special guest today is Joko, the second place winner of BRAWL 2021.
Hello, the internet, I guess.
Hello, and congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations to you, obviously.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's quite funny because,
Yeah, it's almost as if you've become the guest on your own podcast.
Yeah, it is quite weird.
Had to settle for second place instead. So I can't invite the winner this time.
But no, great to have you with us. Right off the bat, I love the style you have in your films. There's been a few films now. I think it was your BRAWL 2020 entry came 11th place, and that kind of one shot brick film you did, where it was kind of through the years. I thought that was a really cool film.
Ah, yes, Age of Amber. That was a lot of work. That was.
Yeah, so we usually only just talk about the top 10 in depth. So, but I did really love that film from last year. So it's great to see you kind of move all the way up to number 2. That's really cool.
I think it surprises me more than anyone else, to be honest.
Well, yeah, it feels like your films are always kind of pushing the boundaries a bit. They're a slightly different style than what other people are making. You did The Cliff, didn't you, a while back?
Oh, I did, yes.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I wasn't really familiar with you at the time, but that was very interesting in style. And also that Brick 3024, recently enough.
Yeah, so yeah, that one came out of me only having access to that one minifigure and the brick he was working with.
Yeah,
I looked around the room, went, oh, there's a mirror there, and well, there we go, an idea was born.
Oftentimes limitations can create the more interesting stuff like that. But I mean, in that one, with some of the stuff with the mirror, I was looking at it and I was kind of thinking, I'm not even sure how this all works. Where are the seams, or where does one element begin and one ends? Is there editing, or is it all in camera?
There was quite a lot of masking in that video. I spent longer on the edit than I did on the actual filming of it. But I could have spent less time if I'd just thought out some of the bits a bit more. It really didn't need all that much if I'd planned it entirely in advance.
I just you actually just reminded me then, Penta, that you did the Cliff a couple of years ago for Zach, and I remember at the time being really impressed by that. It was just a really kind of it really just stood out, quite a unique film, yeah. I actually forgot that you actually made that one. Actually, yeah, I remember really liking that when it came out.
Yeah, that was my first Zach entry, wasn't it? So
it reminded me of Worms, the old game. I don't know if you ever played that.
Well, yes. It's actually based on an old Flash animation. I don't know if either of you have seen the original The Cliff. So basically, I took that concept of just lots of random people with random silly weapons and such like, trying to get either side of the cliff.
Oh, yeah.
And chaos ensues.
I suppose maybe the original was inspired by some video games like Worms or other things similar.
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. It's got
big Flash animation, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, they're always heavy on the old copyright.
But I was just thinking again, basically a lot of your stuff, it would fit perfectly in the current summer contest on Bricks in Motion Manifest, and I believe you're working on something for that. Is that right?
I am, yes. And well, for the first time, my brother, who obviously I'm Jay from JOCO and he's O from JOCO. He's normally just doing a bit of voice acting stuff, but this time he's doing a little bit of the animating as well. So that'll be quite fun to see, to be honest.
Very nice.
Yeah, I actually saw a short clip that he did on Discord. Yeah, actually, I'm really looking forward to seeing the entries from Manifest. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting contest with the whole idea of breaking boundaries and coming up with new things.
It looks like you're using real fire at some point.
Oh, yes, that as well. That was an interesting one. Don't try this at home. Just a massive disclaimer there. I did vaguely know what I was doing.
Yeah, did that all go according to plan, or are there any funny stories there?
Well, you see, the funny thing was, only recently bought the DSLR, and I'm still giving that a test, to be honest. And this is my first real attempt at recording footage on it live. And for the life of me, I could not work out how to change the exposure properly in the video. It was fighting back against me. The only one setting I was allowed to change was it's like the frame time or something. But yeah, no, that didn't have any effect on it at all. So it's going to be a bit of an edit to make the footage match the animation which it's going to be sitting within. But hopefully it'll look quite cool.
Yeah, I had a similar problem trying to do a live action shot with the DSLR, and I think I had to crank the ISO, which made the shot a bit grainier than all the other shots. But you know, I mean, I would have thought that having like using vintage lenses rather than automatic lenses would actually no, maybe that was the problem.
Well, I guess with a vintage lens, you know what it's set to. It's not going to have any digital sort of strange effects going on.
Well, that's what I would have thought. I would have thought I'd be able to open the aperture to get the shot as bright as the other shots, but I don't know. I was having a lot of trouble with that, and I just kind of had to accept that the one shot was just a bit grainier.
Yeah, I mean, when YouTube compression is factored into it, I'm sure no one's really going to be able to notice, to be honest. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's another thing that kind of makes me miss using a webcam. You could just switch it over to video and it would look the exact same.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've not given up on the webcam just yet.
Yeah.
It's definitely got its uses.
For sure, especially your style seems to be heavily webcam focused. I mean, the moving camera.
Well, yeah, with this latest BRAWL entry, I did that entirely with the DSLR. I was just trying to see how much I could manage the whole camera movement with that, and I think it worked out all right.
So what was the setup for moving the camera? Because it certainly looks unlike other Brickfilms with a moving DSLR.
That's probably because it's a bit haphazard, to be honest. I had it set on the tripod the whole time, and I had to shift the tripod around a little bit. And for a few shots in the hot air balloon, I was actually raising it up slightly and lowering it down just frame by frame, just to give it a bit of a bob to it. So a lot of manual camera movement on the tripod.
So I'm guessing you must have a good tripod then, where you can move everything and it stays relatively steady.
Yeah, fortunately, it's actually turned out really quite well.
Because I feel like moving the entire tripod, I don't know, I could only imagine that like being super inconsistent, and I'd get hung up on trying to, make it look, get it, shifted over an inch or two, or it sounds like
yeah, no, I'll definitely say there's a bit of that going on, but with the whole 1 week deadline, especially, I didn't have a full week to work on it. The days I was available, I was just like, I have to get this done. And if you look really closely, by the end of it, I did cut back a bit on the camera movement just to try and get it finished in time.
But your the previous Johnny Thunder film, or the one for Thack, was that done with webcam?
Yes, that was entirely webcam, that one.
Yeah, I like all of
I
those.
wasn't used enough to the DSLR to try it out for a whole 24-hour period.
Shots where the camera is following a character through a room. Yeah. Those stand out in Brickfilms, I think. When it's like really tight and closed space and this character's moving.
My one regret with that Thack entry was when it has a big pan around him in the future setting, and I just ended up going by way too fast. And for most people, they won't be able to see that this massive set that I've managed to put together there. They'll just go, whoa, Johnny Thunder, spinning around him. But yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I think it's cool to make a big set and then just kind of breeze past it.
Yeah, for that one, I was lucky enough to have the help of my brother again.
I mean, I guess that must have been built beforehand.
Yeah, I built it from different scraps and stuff that I already had together, and he helped me out. So hopefully no one considers it cheating, but I did a reasonable amount of prep before that fact, just to make sure I had the sort of sets I'd be needing.
If anyone does consider it cheating, then I think we're all cheaters, so it's an even playing field.
That's always good then.
Oh no, I mean, yeah, that film, I was so impressed. I think I did mention it when we were going through them and the Thack special, but I was just so impressed by just like the sheer scale of it, like the amount of sets to it in it, and it really did feel more like a BRAWL entry than a Thack entry, and yeah, I just absolutely loved this set. I think that that kind of the futuristic city, sort of scene as well, especially is really cool, and a lot, the amount of like camera movements and stuff that were in it, I really liked.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, I've no idea how I actually managed to fit that into 24 hours. Looking back, I'm just like, how do they manage this?
Yeah.
It's crazy. But yeah, no, I'm not sure I'll be able to make that longer one again.
Yeah, I think everyone feels that.
I mean, I struggle just to make like 30 seconds of animation in 24 hours. So
Well, I only got 30 seconds done in a week.
Yeah, it's the quality over quantity approach.
Yeah, well, this year I was just kind of taking my time, just just seeing how much I'd get done, not really trying to compete or anything. But I'm happy that I did that, because now I have the start of a film. Oftentimes starting something is the hardest part, so I'll finish it eventually.
That's what they all say.
I have actually been thinking now, because winning BRAWL, coming first place was kind of like such a big goal for me. I've been kind of wanting to do that for so long. Again, I always come in. I think we all probably all come into it like every year thinking that this year we're not going to make a good entry. I don't know if you feel that way. I'm always kind of like, oh, I've run out of ideas, or this one's just not going to be as good as last year's. But no, it was quite funny to me, because it's like I now sort of thinking to myself like, well, now that I've got like first place in BRAWL, should I just kind of like, where do I go now when it comes to BRAWL? Should I just sort of like, make joke entries, or should I keep competing?
It's been cool to see people climbing through the ranks over the years, or over a handful of years at least.
I guess your only next step is to become the most wins of BRAWL for any animator.
And that would take a long time
for the top.
to beat. To beat Twickerbrick would take the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Especially if he starts competing again.
That's true.
We got it lucky this year.
I mean, I was disappointed that there was no Twick entry this year. I mean, but obviously I can't blame them, because they did 10 years in a row. But of course, it almost feels like it's is it really BRAWL without a Twick entry?
I mean, it's always good to see some good films. So
Yeah.
Any good film that hasn't been produced is, I guess, something we haven't got. But
yeah, and of course, sometimes you might hear the odd grumble like, "Oh, Twick just win every time," but it's like, yeah, but we want people to make good films, and then we like watching good films. So if Twick keep cranking out good films, that's a good thing.
Well, I do think it's kind of like, when you look back at the films that he's made over the years, especially for BRAWL, it's like there's no way that it couldn't have been
Top 3.
Yeah. Like, I think like the one he did last year was incredible, and like, I just every year you're thinking back and you're like, oh yeah, actually that one, and that one. It's like there's no. I never think of like, whenever I see him place like, top 3 and whatever, I never sort of question it. It's just because like,
Yeah,
they really do
true.
deserve it each
they really
time.
are good standout entries, basically, and that's what it's being judged on.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's gonna like rank them just because of the name. Like, it's always the individual film, and they deliver every time. But yeah, for once, this BRAWL special isn't about Twick.
Yeah. But I suppose I might as well ask, like, how did you how did you start going into brick filming and that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, goes back a bit. I mean, it depends on where we start, to be honest. I've just, as soon as I had a camera to do stuff with webcams and stuff, I was always trying to do little bits of animation. They weren't any good at the time. This was about 2011-ish. But my first real proper brick film, I guess you could say, was in 2015. It was very well titled, Raiders of the Egyptian Temple. Just rolls off the tongue, that one. But that's when I first stumbled on like Bricks in Motion and everything, and just brick film communities in general.
Yeah, I noticed that you had one brick film from 2012 and then a gap until 2015. So, like, I assume you'd seen some stuff beforehand, like in 2011 or 2012. So do you remember like some of the early brick films you were watching, or stuff that influenced you?
Yeah, I mean, lots of people, obviously they've been involved in the community from before like YouTube was a thing or whatever, but no, I stumbled on it all, just random videos on YouTube, bit by bit, and I got an interest in it because, hey, I had Lego, I like Lego, and here's some people making Lego moving in actual stories and stuff. That's what it's cool. So yeah, basically I've been wanting to do that, and finally it just sort of happened. And here I am. I still seem to be making them, so that's always good, isn't it?
Did you ever see Namchild's brick films, like Through the Hatch?
I mean, I might well have done. I don't remember that off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. Just
I sort of got really strange YouTube ones, but one which really stuck in the mind at the time. I mean, I wouldn't these days call it a particularly good video, but it has inspired me probably the most. It's just Lego Mars Mission movie. I can't remember who it's by. I could dig out the link and make that shown in some way. But you know, back in like 2008 or whenever Mars Mission was out, I was like, oh, I'll just see has anyone made something with these cool sets and stuff. And yeah, this guy just made this little story with all the aliens and the astronauts and yeah, that inspired me for the most part.
I'm not familiar with that, so I would like to see that link.
I think that's one of the ones where they don't speak and they just make silly sort of noises, you know, like the more official Lego produced ones did at the time.
Mm-hmm. But I just ask about Namchild's stuff because he was using real fire and explosions. So seeing some of that behind the scenes stuff of your upcoming Manifest entry reminded me of that.
So there's a few old ones I've seen which did have fire and stuff like that. I can't necessarily place what the names of them in my head, but I mean that's always good. I love the inclusion of lots of different materials. Yeah. So I mean I've made videos with sort of flour as snow and soil as soil. You know, all these sort of things. I love it when people make that.
Mm-hmm. And it does stand out greatly. I think brickfilmers are often like kind of fascinated when people are using something that isn't Lego. Even
yeah,
if
I mean,
people making
silly,
it think that it's like the easy way out, or you know, the quick way or something. But like the background in your BRAWL entry, there's like paper or card or something, you know, like that sort of stuff.
When ambition exceeds your Lego collection, sometimes you have to look further afield, and in this case, I think it paid off.
But yeah, you know, like when you're watching a playlist of like 70 brick films in a row, and then somebody has a paper background, you're like, oh, a paper background, how novel.
Yes, I have Lucy to thank for that, the resident mountain maker. Quite a lot of mountains to put together for that background, because obviously they're scrolling along in the background. They got to go a bit further than you can see on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really like anything like that when people are just sort of playing around, just sort of like expanding beyond just like brick films. I think it's just really cool to see, you know, expanding beyond Lego. I think it's just really interesting to see like different things you can do that are still practical but like not Lego. Like the thing I really like to do, I love doing explosions with cotton wool pads and just sort of like wrapping them up and just sort of like so they turn into like this sort of like, you know, it's like a load of fluff and you can just sort of like
that does make
shine some like gelled lights on them.
That does make a good smoke effect.
Yeah,
it's something I'd like to try someday. It's always something like specifically with explosions and muzzle flashes and stuff. Every animator has a different twist on it, and I really love that.
Yeah, even in the first place BRAWL entry, the muzzle flashes were bricks and light. I guess light as well. Like whenever the guns were fired, like when I do the explosions, I did the same. Like either cotton wool or tissue, like balled up tissues, and then just shine loads of light in the frame as well. I like that a lot better than a digital explosion.
Yeah, especially for a nighttime gunshot where it really would just flash out the screen. You know, it makes it feel like a proper impact.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have been the first time I've done that with a gunshot, but it really just sells the effect a lot more, I think, than just having. I felt like at the time, like it wouldn't have felt right if there wasn't, you know, like a massive load of lights, you know, especially at night, you know.
Yeah, I did pick out that in your entry, and I thought it was really nice, just the little brick.
And then I think it was this BRAWL. There was another entry where there was gunshots where, you know, there'd be a brick stuff light on the tip of the gun for just one frame, but as far as I remember, the wires were left in. It was pretty funny
I think that was Panoramic entry.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a shame. I guess he just sort of ran out of time.
Sometimes I almost like to see stuff like that. Like it just seems sort of, you know, very stop motion-y, like tangible. But at the same time, it's like, you know, it would have been pretty easy to mask just most of the wire for the handful of frames that it appears.
This is again why it's always really good when people produce the behind the scenes of their entry, because you don't typically see all the work that goes into it, especially when it's just little things like that. And you go, wow, so this is how they've achieved that effect.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's always good.
Yeah, that is true too, yeah. It is nice to be able to see how it's done even in the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of harkens back to, you know, in our last podcast we were talking about the that Brickfilm series that was kind of unfinished. And the way that, you know, like some of the animation was so like incredibly impressive, but like all the rigs and
Dr.
everything.
Jobs,
Yeah, like all the rigs and everything was still there, but it kind of got, because the animation was so impressive and what they were doing was so creative, it kind of almost enhanced it in a way, because you got to see like, oh wow, these are all the things you can do, and this is how it was done, you know. And I think it's kind of this really cool effect where like if you hadn't seen the rigs, you wouldn't have. It probably wouldn't have been as impressive in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, it makes you appreciate how much work had to go into rigging it.
Yeah.
Like otherwise it just kind of flies by and you just think, well, that looks good.
I mean, that's the whole thing with filmmaking in general, isn't it?
Yeah. You're trying to make people not see all of that stuff,
Yeah. You're supposed to be in the moment actually watching the video, not going, oh, that. Oh, that's nice. Well, I like how they've done that.
Yeah.
But that's always great for a second viewing, or, you know, with an actual behind-the-scenes sort of video separate, or any of that sort of stuff. You can break it down and go, oh, yes, I like that approach.
But
and just, you know.
I like the idea, just for as a sort of like personal challenge to myself, I guess. I like to try to hide the brick stuff wires and, like, you know, only edit them out digitally if I really can't hide them.
Well, yes.
I'd like to, you know, if you can see a tiny trace of them, I just like to leave that in.
Especially for deadline sort of competitions like this.
True.
You really don't want to be spending more time in the edit than you have to.
Just sometimes I feel like you don't want to scrub a stop motion film, you know, too heavily, or else it kind of loses some of that stop motion charm.
I think as well, like when you've got such a limited amount of time to do the editing, you want to save it more for things like sound design and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The kind of more, I guess, technical stuff, rather than just, you know, all the things where it's like, if I don't fix this, then it's going to kind of like almost appear unfinished, you know.
Yeah, you got to get the basics down, and sometimes that leaves a few things left unmasked. But back to the charm, you know, it's like the whole Aardman thing where you can see the fingerprints on the actual clay figures and stuff. It's something you just don't get in other mediums, and that's something you kind of want to at least lean into a little bit.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, it is actually kind of, it's also really cool to see, like, when you look at something like that, like Aardman or I think Isle of Dogs, you know, things like that, where you see like very specific practical effects that are like really similar to something that you've seen in brick filming or you've done yourself, and that can be really cool. I remember that with Isle of Dogs, there's when they're all fighting and it turns into this like it turns into like cotton wool, you know, when they're kind of like all sort of fighting each other, and again that kind of just kind of reminded me of stuff that I'd seen before, like within brick films and stuff that I kind of would do myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that great cartoonist sort of effect that you can achieve with it.
Although it's hard to imagine, like, how do outsiders perceive stuff like that? Like, you know, obviously, since we're all making stop motion films, so when we see stuff like that, we're like, oh, it's so cool, you know. But I wonder, like, does it really make a difference to the general audience?
Oh, yeah, I mean, as a brick filmer, I don't think it's possible for me to look at videos in the same way, to be honest. You can't get that perspective.
Well, I mean, it's like, I guess sort of related, but whenever you know, we have like there's been a brawl and you know, the entire time you're constantly obsessing over, you know, is there a mod element, or like, is it visible enough, you know, for them to pick it up and that kind of stuff. But then you kind of watch, like, the next time you watch like anything that's like a film or anything, you're constantly looking for a non-existent mod element. I don't know if that's something that you've felt.
Mod madness.
Oh, you mean like the next film you make, you're thinking, oh, did I put the mod element in the frame?
Well, yeah, sometimes, but even like sometimes I watch something that's like a live action thing, you know, just like on Netflix or just anything, you know, like a film, and I'm looking for like, you know, it suddenly becomes really weird to me, like the fact that you don't have to have like two colors touching each other the entire time.
Okay, I've never experienced that. I don't know. I kind of don't really think about the mod elements when I'm watching the playlist. I mean, sometimes they're so obvious that you see them and you're like, oh yeah, those are the mod colors. But I try not to let it distract me from trying to just watch the film as a film, you know. I don't want to be thinking, oh, did they include the mod element in this shot or not?
Yeah, ideally you try and hide it as much as possible, so it's not a massive part of the film. It's just part of the set dressing.
Well, I mean, with within the rules, you are actually allowed to kind of like crop it as long as you show like the uncropped footage. Sort of like what it was before, but like so it does kind of mean that it doesn't physically have to be there within the film itself.
Yeah. Although it is slightly frowned upon to crop it too often. I don't think there's no like concrete rules or anything, but it's just it takes longer, to have to check all of these uncropped versions of shots,
Yeah, the judges having to look through every single video a second time effectively would not be ideal, I'm sure.
There's a lot of unseen work that goes into, receiving and like approving all the entries. Especially right up against the deadline, it starts to go crazy.
I think as well, I think it is quite good to try and incorporate the mod element within your set design, if you can, without it just being like. I mean, I think sometimes if you're really rushing and you kind of have forgotten like, why last minute you have to add the mod element, so you just have like 2 studs or whatever. I can totally understand that, but like. I think if you can incorporate it into the set and kind of like hide it, I think that can really it can be sort of fun in a way, I think.
It does elevate the video a bit when you go a secret sort of spot the mod rather than look, this is another couple of studs. And the 15-second rule also helps a bit these days, so you can actually pull the occasional close-up shot and all that sort of stuff where you don't have to worry at all about the mod element, and that's probably how it's helped me. I don't know about other people competing, but
oh yeah, totally. I mean, I couldn't have done it without the leeway really. Like, there's a couple of shots in succession where like I literally there was no way that I could add the mod element. So like I did the close up of the fireplace. Like there was no way, like really. So the 15-second wall kind of is a huge benefit, I think.
And if that saves people trying to squeeze a little mod element in the corner where it really shouldn't be, then it's definitely worth it.
Yeah,
because
especially in a shot like that, it could potentially be distracting. But I did do 1 or 2 shots in Attack where there was like a really close up, and there was just no place to put the mod element. But I just took a pen and just wrote the letter on one of the bricks, just really, really, really tiny, but it was visible in the shot because it was so close.
Yeah, see, I always forget about the letter element. Get entirely tied up in the colours.
Yeah, it ends up becoming like essential if you do like a black and white film.
Well, yes. Or you'd have to release an entirely separate version again with it in full colour, which not good for the judges. But with the lesson mod this year, I was actually quite impressed with quite a few of the entries. That they managed to incorporate that really quite well. Like with a couple of videos had a library, and you just had the bookshelves with the letters in numerical order on them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot harder to integrate properly in a video, but when you do, that's good, that is.
Yeah, and it's come such a long way since the first text, where people would write the letter on a piece of paper and it'd be absolutely gigantic and it'd be sellotaped to the wall in every shot.
Best to avoid, if at all possible.
Yeah, I think you don't if possible, you want it to be able to be viewed out of context without being confusing to people. Whereas, like, I think if you're like watching an entry as someone who doesn't know what BRAWL is, it's a bit weird seeing like a bunch of like, I don't know, W's everywhere. Like, what what is this supposed to mean? You just like that would distract you.
Yeah, I find it so much effort just to make an animation in the first place. I wouldn't want people to just watch it within the context of BRAWL. I want it to be able to sit around there and still make sense sort of as a video.
Yeah, of course. In the early days, the rules were way too strict, so that like if a character walked in front of the letter mod and blocked it for just a handful of frames, you might get in trouble for that. So that's why the letters were so gigantic back then, that they couldn't possibly be blocked for even one frame.
Oh yes, of course, it was every single frame for a while, wasn't it? But I'm glad I came in a bit after that.
That was one of the good things about BRAWL, because a different guy started BRAWL, and so he made that change in starting the BRAWL rules, and it took a while for TAC to adopt that method, but it's certainly the better way of doing things.
It was quite funny when I was doing the set design for my film. I didn't even think about it too much when I was building the kind of like the cabin, but I have these old windows which are red and white, and just straight away then it was like, ah, great, now you got these big windows and now I don't have to worry about it at all.
Yes, that's a good incorporation right there.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in the context, so you just don't bat an eyelid.
Yeah, I think there was one tack where I already had in mind that I wanted to do a Benny and Lee film, and then the colours were announced as blue and yellow, and like they already have a gigantic blue and yellow door frame on one side of their house, and then a blue and yellow window frame on the other side, so I was basically good to go.
Yeah, I was thinking back to my THAC entry at the beginning of this year. The Orb of Whack 2, the little MacGuffin that he's carrying around. I was like, I do not want to make this the mod element colours. Everyone will just look at it and go, that's the mod element, but they won't think of it as something in the context of the film. So, fortunately, I had the right colour pieces to avoid that.
That's true. I mean, there have been some entries where characters will pick up the mod element and even refer to it as like, what's this? Oh, that's the mod element. That's important. But
yeah, it's become its whole thing by this point, and well, if you don't want to encroach on that, then you have to actively avoid it.
Yeah. And I feel like you have to be very careful about, making nods towards the mod element or dropping the name of the team in the dialogue.
Yeah,
it's been done so often that it's usually eye rolling. But if you have a really good joke, you might be able to get away with it.
If you've been watching a full playlist of these, then you don't want one word just cropping up again and again. That starts to take you out of it a bit. But again, when you're watching that out of context sometime down the line, that one actually improves, because of course you're not going to know that this one word actually has some particular meaning behind it.
That's true. But yeah, it is a very different viewing experience to be watching Brickfilms as part of just a big long playlist of like 70 films in a row. It's very far removed from if somebody just posts an individual thing on Discord and you just watch it as one. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, I guess. Like maybe you aren't going to appreciate the films individually on the first go around, but at the same time, if you sit down with the full playlist, you're going to watch them all. So you're going to catch all of the entries, and some might stand out to you that you mightn't have otherwise noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting one. That I do find I see a lot more different Brick filmers when these contests come around, because I wouldn't necessarily always seek them out, but when they're in the playlist, I go, oh, this guy's good, and it's quite a good thing for discoverability, I find.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I think for people starting out, if they kind of regularly take part in contests, I think it's it is a way of getting known within the community, I think, and it ends up becoming quite a good kind of like advert for what you do.
See, Brick Film Day this year was an interesting one for that, because it wasn't a contest and there weren't any particular rules or timescales. It was just everyone try and release on this day and we'll put it all in one big playlist. So I don't know how many people sat through all of that, but I did. And again, I found a few animators who I hadn't actually really noticed before. But they weren't constrained by the normal contest rules. So having a mix of both is, I think, quite good. Yeah.
Although, we have been joking for a while that Brick Film Day is kind of getting out of hand. It's turning into Brick Film Week, the amount of entries.
Yeah, it's far removed from the original idea. I think the name's a bit strange these days, but no, it's good.
But
just have community events like that.
I think they kind of when they named it Brick Film Day, they were kind of like they were not anticipating how successful it would be, and I think had they known, they probably wouldn't have called it Brick Film Day.
Every day is Brick Film Day.
Yes, there's a lot of things that happen in Brick Film Day every day. Of course, when it started, the number of entries easily would have fit into one day.
Yeah, of course, it was a more selective thing that they just chose a few animators and had them focused on that day. Mm-hmm. But there's pros and cons to both, obviously, and you don't get as much discoverability of new animators that way, do you? Mm-hmm. So a mix of both is always good.
Yeah, but I always feel more motivated to watch an entire playlist if it's a playlist of contest entries, especially if I actually entered the contest myself. But you can notice that if there's people who might have barely any YouTube subscribers, like when they have a film in a contest playlist, it does have more views than their other uploads. So yeah, it is good for getting it in front of more people's eyes. If you're starting from nothing.
Crazy how few subscribers some of the top 15 entries have for Brawl this year.
Mm-hmm.
I was just having a look at it again. I was like, what's going on here? It's just such a random mix of different levels. And I guess, yeah, that's just a case of how new they are to the platform, and it takes time to build that up.
But of course, nowadays there's a lot of people who are starting out and they're super young, but they're already really, really good. They're a hell of a lot better than I was when I was the same age as them, which is always really weird to see. So, like, that can explain it as well. It's like, wow, how does this guy have, almost no subscribers? And then you check his channel and he's only made like 2 Brickfilms, but already at a really good standard.
Yeah, I do think that like Brawl and contests like it, like Zach, I feel like a good like couple of Brickfilmers get discovered each year. Like like I think there's quite a lot of people that will they'll gain new subscribers and whatever. I think it's a good way of especially when I feel like this is important to really kind of like pretty much hammer in really the fact that it's never like guaranteed that you're going to get like a lot of views, and sometimes I think having good views is what really matters. I think
quality of views over quantity.
Yeah, totally. I think that's really what matters. I think I was talking about this the other day, but the like I look back at like my analytics and the YouTube studio, and some of my views. I look back at like because my most viewed brick film is Dancing in the Street, and that's got like I don't know, like 47,000 views or something by this point. But like when you compare it to like the kind of response and the amount of like likes by comparison in terms of like by like views, my brick films that have got like a few hundred views have like a much bigger response.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Brickfilms with only a couple hundred views that have more comments than ones with thousands of views. So I mean, it must mean more to the people who saw it.
Well, like my 2 like most commented brick films are so my BRAWL entry that I just released, Struck Attract, and Cut and Run, and they're by no means like they're not even up to 1,000 views, but they have by far the biggest response. And then they've got like, I mean, like for example, like you look at like the comments of Truck Attract's got 45 comments versus Army Training Video, which has got 34,000 views. It's got 29 comments. So it's like I think people get a little bit too obsessed over the views, and they kind of forget like how the views are kind of like they have the least consequence in terms of like...
I mean, I feel like that example just goes to show like it's good that the better film is getting more recognition comments wise. It just goes to show that view count doesn't correlate with which is the better film or not.
Yeah, I mean personally I do find comments a lot more valuable. It's actually showing that someone's engaged with it rather than just put it on the background or something. And it's like, oh, people actually like my video. What's going on here? And I mean, supposedly you get that from the like button, but that's I don't know. I don't ever find that really many people bother with that.
I don't even look at numbers of
likes.
I
don't look at that on anyone's video for the most part. I forget it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like as well, like there is another element to it as well in that we talk about different brick filmers and different brick films and stuff, and I think especially like you think of like BRAWL entries that a lot of them you kind of remember for years to come, and it's really funny because you look back and the view counts are not particularly that high, even for like brick films from years ago and stuff. But like you never get this impression that they weren't big. I feel like if it weren't for the actual, if you couldn't physically see the amount of views that videos had, so you'd have no idea like who were like getting the views.
Yeah, that was kind of, I guess you could say that was the way it worked like before YouTube. Back in the brickfilms.com era, the films that were recognized as classics, they weren't the same type of things that got all the YouTube views later on. So it felt like this era where because you didn't know what the numbers on things were, you just had to get this feel for what people remembered and liked the best. So it felt very pure, I guess you could say. Like the only reason that something would be remembered is because it was that good.
So a word of mouth type thing is what are people actually engaging with and talking about.
I think as well, like I've always kind of you know, I think even like in like 2015 when I was really first starting to brick film, I was already at that point when it comes to YouTube where like the era of like loads of brick films getting like, you know, hundreds of thousands of views and stuff, that kind of passed, unless you were kind of like one of these like, you know, Michael Hickox or like you know, the big kind of trending kind of brick films, you know. I was already sort of beyond that point, I think, when I started, so I kind of very quickly sort of realised that getting loads of views was never kind of a big like guarantee.
Well, actually, come to think of it, it's crazy how fickle it is, you know. The rug can just be pulled from under you by the you know, the algorithm, or
mysterious
some
YouTube algorithm.
Yeah, some mystery in the sky.
The YouTube algorithm is merciless, and you know, at any moment the success you have could be kind of completely taken away. And I think that's, you know, not just brick filming. I think that is true of like a lot of content, unless you're like doing something like, I don't know, there are some that I feel like to some degree are kind of like almost indestructible. You know, when you know, if you got like some people that have got like YouTubers that have got like, they're into tens of millions or something, and they, I don't know, like streamers or something like that. But like I'd say like a big chunk of content within YouTube, it's only kind of like, you know, one step of the algorithm away from completely, you know, YouTube just sort of like making them irrelevant in a way.
Didn't Jang Bricks recently have to create an entirely new channel for some nebulous like algorithm related reason? You know, he's still got a good following, I think. So it's a bit strange. So this isn't a brick filmer. It's I don't know if you know him. He just does some reviews of Lego sets and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really strange, and that's he's even still being successful, and that's happened. So I guess there's only so much you can fixate on that, to be honest.
I wonder how it probably feels a lot worse to have achieved the sort of, you know, millions of views high and ability to make a career out of it, and then have it all taken away from you. Like,
yeah, honestly, I mean, respect for anyone who tries to make a career out of it, but it's never going to be stable. I think we've seen that time and time again.
Yeah, like I feel like mentally it's probably better to just keep going, you know, not trying to get views, or, you know, or never reach that point and then lose it. You know, it's hard to know unless you've actually been there, but I could imagine it sort of souring you on the whole thing.
Yeah, thinking your glory years are behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, not only that, but then also, I think your glory years are behind you, but also that you're actually fairly young as well, you know, on top of that. People that were really successful when they were like teenagers, and now they're in their mid-20s, but they feel like they're kind of like 5 years have gone, you know. It's
plenty of time to find something else.
Yeah, I just and yeah, I feel like, I guess this is not, I mean, I guess sort of technically related to brick filming. Like someone like Bobby Burns is probably an example of how, like, as well, like, I think getting a big amount of fame all at once can have a really negative effect on you as well. So there are two sides to it, I think. The not only the kind of like the fact that your fame can just, you know, die at any moment, but also like that, I feel like there is something that, you know, with people who may have had just a kind of like a humble amount of like, you know, not a huge amount of like followers, but a decent amount of followers, but then sort of suddenly being exposed to like, you know, like 10 times the amount of viewers, and I can imagine that having a really real negative effect on you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a lot to deal with. Like, I guess it depends on the person, on how they respond to that, but I'm not sure I'd be the one for being massively in the limelight, even if I could.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just different personality types, you know, like we always see that there's, you know, there seems to be brick filmers who are happier to just enter the contests and, you know, engage with community, even if the films might not even crack 1,000 views, but it feels meaningful to enter contests and have, this sort of shared experience. Whereas there's plenty of other people who never enter any contests and, maybe make things that get more views, and I guess that's just what they prefer to do. And I guess they're more, if they do get to that point of suddenly getting a bunch of fame all at once, maybe they're more equipped to deal with that.
I think
Who knows?
as well though, like something that kind of is sort of related to the the whole like the views being good rather than worrying about like the kind of number of views you're getting. I think another thing as well is like I really love it when people comment on very specific things within a video that they like. I mean, I think it's a really nice feeling to get like any comments, but like when the comments are literally literally kind of talking about very specific things they like, it's really nice. Like I found that with the Striker Tract, like there were a few comments about the very specific the transition between when the cigar falls on the floor and it you have the transition to the fireplace. It's so nice.
That is a good one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean that was like one of the things that when I was doing that, I was really excited about it because I felt like, oh yeah, I really love, I really love how like this sort of came out, and I was like, I'm really, there's like when there's like specific shots and parts of a film that you make that you're kind of like you're really excited to share it, that was like
people notice,
Yeah, and I think the fact that the first time I got like someone commenting on that, it was like, someone's seen it.
Yeah, that's the funny thing when people just view the video, you don't know how much they've seen it or what's come in, what they've taken away from it. So yeah, if people leave comments on specific things, oh yes, they know that they've seen it, and that's I always try and leave kind of targeted comments about people's videos because I know I like that.
And we probably return to these sort of talking points very often, but I mean, possibly because between each episode we probably see the same sort of things popping up on Discord of people saying like, oh, I did this and it got more views, or how do I get views, and it's like, don't care.
Yeah, and like for real, I totally get why people feel that way. I feel like views is kind of equivalent to like money. Like it's quite similar to money in terms of like how you want to keep growing and you want to keep kind of like you want that sort of success, and you equate like the views as being successful. And like I totally get it, especially when you're young. Like I mean, that's all I was totally obsessed with it when I was like starting out. Like I wanted to be like the next Michael Hickox, I wanted to get like a million, millions of views per video and stuff. But like, eventually you kind of realize that it's quite tiring, and unless the content that you're making just works within the algorithm, I feel like it can be quite emotionally draining, and I think you kind of can just end up on autopilot, not really making stuff that you want to make and never really taking that many risks. And I say this, but then you got people like Edbound who always seem to be doing really well. But I do genuinely believe that he enjoys making what he wants to make, and I just think that's an example of like, I think it's totally fine to make things that are successful, but I think it's like you shouldn't do it if you're not passionate about it. If that makes sense. Like if you genuinely want to make the things that are successful, then I think that's when it works. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it takes so much time and effort just to make a single animation, and if you're not enjoying the process or the results or anything, then I mean, that's not great morale, really, is it? And it's hard enough producing all of that and getting the video how you want, let alone trying to also in the background cater towards this algorithm which just changes, and sometimes it's easier just to not think about that.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, we often talk about these kind of things, but I know, I think it always is kind of it always remains relevant, I think, and I just think that it's just important to kind of remind people that, I don't know, I think having fun is the most important thing, and making stuff that you find fulfilling personally is really the most important thing, I think.
Before we become too much like broken records, I wonder if we should start discussing the BRAWL entries, because it takes a bit longer than when we have just 3 films to discuss.
Yes.
Yeah, true. yeah, I think this is quite a good time to start. Yeah. So, before we head on to the top 10 entries of BRAWL 2021, I just wanted to give a brief shout out to those who placed in the top 15. From 15th to 11th place was The Return by Loving Lego, My Dearest Love by BlueBrick, Over the Sea by FilmCity, Return to Lender by Fruitcake Films, and Froggytale by Squidtastic Videos. Do also check out those videos as well. The link to those videos will also be in the description along with the other films. But without further ado, here is the top 10 countdown of BRAWL 2021. The 10th place entry is A Day in the Life of Gus Geesewood by Panoramic.
Is that Geesewood, I think? Or Geesewood? I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, right off the bat, I really like her, like the look of the film, like visually. He's he set a lot of it to music and stuff, and to kind of like for the flow and stuff of the film. I really like the kind of like aesthetics of the film, I guess. I feel like the film is mostly centered around the kind of like the tone and sort of like style of the film. But the style that it has, I think it is, it does have a lot of style, I guess. It works well, I think.
Yeah, I think it does often work for a film to be sort of like, yeah, maybe the plot is almost secondary to the style, but that's okay, because it's like it's there to just get you into this sort of style piece. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I just say, I really love that campfire.
Yeah.
It worked really well.
Yeah, those shots are really nice. The flickering light.
Yeah. And then the guy just flips over when eating a turkey leg for no apparent reason. But yeah. Yeah, no, it does look great.
I really like the fireplace, and it's a really creative, kind of thing. I feel like instead of just going for the typical flame piece, he wanted to kind of go for something that was a bit more like a smaller fire, and yeah, I think that came out really well.
And the lighting in general for that is really good, because it's not just an awkwardly light background behind this fire. It really it sets the tone. It feels like a night out in the desert, I think.
Mm. And there's a lot of nice physics to the animation, like when things are thrown, they hang in the air for a little bit. But one thing I do want to say though, and it's kind of going against what I was saying earlier about the leaving in the sort of traces of how things are made, but it does feel like people have really pushed sort of not caring about blue tack being visible in Brickfilms for a while. And I don't think it needs to be scrubbed down to absolutely nothing, but I do kind of wish people would, not make it like jump out at you, not make it be super visible where possible.
Yeah, I do get that, but I'm not sure I'm one to talk. I do have a habit of leaving it visible, especially for the out of socket animations.
Yeah, I mean we've all done it, but yeah.
Sometimes you have like a tiny bit, and I know like how I love doing out of socket animation in my films, and quite often there's always just a little bit of tack you can kind of just about see, and I think that's fine.
Yeah,
I think like there is a point where like they the animator just really doesn't care about if it's in shot, and they'll kind of just like have like a massive like swab of like of like blue tack, where it's just like it gets to the point where it's just distracting you from the actual animation. I think more so than just like having a rig in shot in some ways.
But I guess some people just find it funny to just leave it in and make it obvious, like, yeah, I'm just using blue tack here, and that's the joke. But I don't know, it just kind of distracts me, but that's just me.
I mean, personally, until someone pointed it out, I didn't really think about it. I was like, look, he's floating. What do you mean there's blue tack? Oh, I don't see that. But yeah. It is always good to try and hide as much as possible.
But I suppose we should talk about the 9th place entry.
Yeah, so Darry's Wonder Reality, which by toadproductions. So yeah, it's visually it's a really it's a really impressive film. It's set to Everywhere at the End of Time, which is a 6.5 hour experimental album by The Caretaker, which is split into 6 parts, and basically it's all about like the experiencing like dementia, and how like things become more and more distorted, and it's all kind of about like, you know, this experience of like holding on to your last like existing memories to the point where everything is just kind of like inaudible, and you just he uses this music in this film as a kind of like, you know, for the soundtrack of like this guy. I don't know if it's necessarily supposed to be dementia. I think it's mostly done for aesthetic purposes, and it's,
well, of course, if you know what the music is, it does bring that to mind as far as interpreting the film.
It's quite a specific kind of like reference, so I could imagine that a lot of people not realizing that. But yeah, I think in the film he's like trapped in his dreams, and he's like trying to like wake up, and there's a lot of like really creative visuals throughout, and yeah, I think it's very effective on a visual level.
Yeah, dream sequences always have a lot of potential, and obviously, you know, this one takes its own approach on it, and that's quite cool. I think I'll just talk about the bit in the real world looking place at night with the rain and everything. I always love it when people use water. I know the drops are bigger than they would be in reality, but no, I love that look, and he pulled it off really well, especially with the lighting and everything. It really set the atmosphere alongside the music.
I can sort of tell from your tone where you're going with the... I just kind of want to say, like, I feel like I was on board with the story and it being sort of more open to interpretation, I guess. But I felt like it kind of fumbled the ending by kind of turning it a bit jokey. It kind of felt like it didn't want to commit to being a bit more abstract, whereas I would have preferred if it did do that. But for the majority, I really was on board with this entry. And as far as I know, the guy who made it is like remarkably young for how good it looks. Like, you'd never think that somebody would be making something this good at what I think is a young age. And also, one thing I want to say, it looks like he already has macro filters. And I only just recently got macro filters for the DSLR, and I can't believe that I made an entire major project without them. So if anyone's listening and they have a DSLR but they don't have a set of macro filters, highly recommended.
I'll take that on board.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that kind of strike me, is that they're quite young. Well, I mean, I assume they're fairly young, and the fact that this is a, you know, incredibly impressive film on a visual level, I think it's well, especially like, I think there's a lot of variety. I think it's simply by, you know, being, I guess, by nature being, you know, like a variety of like dream sequences and stuff. There's a lot packed into it. You know, you have this kind of like, you know, the sort of white sort of void, and then you've got like this sort of street scene, which I think is probably my favorite sequence in the film. Just for, like, aesthetically, I really love that shot when just after he sort of jumped out of the window of like the first dream sequence, and then there's like this really cool shot of a rooftop, and the suggestion of like the world's, you know, like you've got like lots of city, like, you know, like buildings and stuff. That was really cool. And then you've got like the lighting of the different buildings, and you know, there's just I just found it very, very effective.
Agreed.
And yeah, I mean, there's so much in this film that I really like. I think that, I guess if I'm going to be kind of critical, I think there is sort of and I guess this is something that kind of you kind of pick up on over time when you're making stuff. Like having the title card at the end saying like, then he woke up. Like you'd be able to kind of like pick that up on that without seeing, you know, without having to be told like in a title card. I totally get kind of like, you know, when I was starting out, like that's something that I probably would have done myself. But like,
but, you know, I do want to say that, like, I don't want it to sound like we're sort of writing off any sort of story level entirely. It might sound like we're here saying, oh, you know, visually we like it, etc., etc. But like, I think the reason why these sort of story concerns or title card concerns are being mentioned is because it was like so close to not sort of fumbling it, if you know what I mean. I don't know if I'm coming across too harsh, but
it's a bit of a tonal clash at the end, unfortunately. I guess.
But I mean, we wouldn't even be mentioning it except for the fact that it was doing well for the majority of the film. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely worth like I guess pointing out is that like there were so many elements of this that are that's so strong, and that is mean primarily the only reason why we're kind of being critical of it is because there was so much to appreciate.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just think it tonally I think that is probably the main issue I guess, and is the tonal shift. Overall, I mean I'm really glad to see this like place. I thought it was a very impressive film, and yeah, I just think it just goes to show like even from like a young age there are a lot of Brick films now that are like that are really like doing impressive stuff early on, you know.
And of course, it's always nice to see Brick films that have a more sort of unconventional narrative structure.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Now, watching these and talking about them after the announcement of the summer contest, I can see so many of them could just kind of fit right into that.
Yeah, and it's not even just using it like for the sake of just doing random nonsense. Like, you can actually get story out of it, and that's nice to see.
For sure, yeah. So should head off to the 8th place entry.
Yes,
Can do.
Cool. Aftermath by Bricks and Pieces, and actually it was quite funny. There is actually there was a bit of a theme in this year's BRAWL of like films about soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
But this one I really liked. Just for like I think it is very effective for like how short it is. Yeah, I mean it tells a lot again on just like on visuals.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
Yeah, I generally call them the unofficial teams when there's something that keeps popping up in all of the entries, even though it has seemingly very little to do with what the stated theme was. And yeah, this BRAWL was certainly films about soldiers.
It seemed like the two kind of like unofficial themes were it was soldiers and returning items at a shop.
Yeah, but that kind of makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you expect that one.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a few that when whoever's running a contest is selecting a theme, they're I'm sure these are going to come in. But yeah, I don't know in this case about whether that would have been predicted. But that's
I mean,
part of the
sometimes
fun
they're basically impossible to predict. Like, was it last Tack when there was just a whole bunch of entries of naked people? I think it was.
Yeah,
and yours was
that
one of them.
definitely had. Yes. Hey, he had trousers.
Something that I also filled into was the 4:3 aspect ratio, theme, which a lot of entries had.
Yeah, funny. I nearly chose to go with that for this one as well.
But yeah, certainly this is one of a number of entries where the strength is certainly telling the story without dialogue, and all the framing is very nice.
I also really like
Absolutely.
match cuts where you've got and like they have the one here where he's like he goes from being the soldier to sitting down. It's like the face is in the exact same position. That kind of stuff I always find really impressive.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I know you've mentioned this before. If we have to criticize the smiling guy who's dead.
Yeah, there's much less Lego faces available which don't have big excessive grins on them, so I can see how this always happens. But
the guy who's got like two actual holes in his torso and blood, but then he's just got the classic hilarious mustache smile face. I was kind of laughing at that, to be honest. I feel like you could probably maybe turn the face away from the camera, and you might be able to sell it.
Yeah, like I've done that in the past when what I do is like if they get knocked out or whatever, I usually just like turn their face away so they're not like they're not visibly awake. And I guess this is kind of similar in that it's something that is a bit of a pet peeve for me whenever with Brick films is like the choice of face, and I admittedly have done this myself. I think using like inappropriate faces for specific things, especially if it's like a smiley face or something that's supposed to be quite serious. And
the smiling mustache face, I've always thought of that as one of the most inherently funny Lego faces, which is probably because of seeing the Meat Sauce films by Chihuahua. If you throw a clip of a Meat Sauce film on the screen now, it'll be abundantly clear to everyone why that is.
See, I was thinking, What about people approaching it who aren't used to Lego animations? What are they going to see when they look at faces like that? But then you've thrown this curveball in where it's like, oh no, but you have seen too many Brickfilms, and now you've got a particular association with it. So, yeah, minefield of context.
One thing I do want to say though is, so I guess sort of related to talking about the visible tech, it seems like they were using like white clay as the meat on the chicken leg when it's being eaten. I think that's a really good use of visible clay. Using it as sort of food getting eaten.
Oh yeah, I actually noticed that before.
Yeah, again, a little bit of taking another medium in to enhance the general brick film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when you look past the smiling faces in the battlefield, this is definitely one of the more harder hitting ones of the war, because it's quite hard to express in Lego, and especially if there's loads of action going on, you just feel it like, it's an action movie. But this one, because it's aftermath, it's set after the war, you like the battle, you're looking at it and yeah,
it works.
It's quite hard to achieve a serious tone in Lego, but it does do a reasonable job in this one.
It worked really well as a very quiet entry. Like,
that is true, actually. Something that I hadn't even really thought about is that
it felt very deliberate.
Yeah, like I think, so often it's always about the actual the action, and people often forget like that sort of I guess quite sort of disturbingly quiet. Kind of like it's all over, but it's like, I guess that's something that you don't really see very often, especially in brick films.
The sound design really does help with that. It didn't need music, and I'm glad it didn't have any, because it feels more raw in that sense.
Yeah, I think it definitely added to it, that just sort of quietness. Yeah.
But I think that this film is the highest placing war brawl entry, so it wins that contest.
Yeah, true.
The weird secret extra theme contest.
Like a good sort of honourable mention for that,
Because I know that if I accidentally make a film that has the sort of unofficial team that a bunch of others have, I always think, oh no, now if we all did the same thing, we're all gonna look a bit lesser in the playlist, to no fault of your own, just because of the repetition of the thing that keeps coming up. It's like you think that people aren't gonna like your entry as much. So but if you end up being the highest placing that had that, it's like, yes, I win.
So head over to the 7th entry, Beacon Light by Formal Lens.
Another very visually strong entry.
The lighting is actually like particularly good, I think, in this one.
Mm-hmm. The colours are really nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of vibrance to it. I like you have like that kind of like the ticket booth, and I really love how much brighter that is compared to like the rest of the room and stuff. And just like sort of attention to detail, I really love.
Yeah, for sure. That certain parts are much brighter than others. It looks great, and sometimes in brick films, I think people are kind of afraid to do that. Like, once one part is bright, they kind of think, oh well, I should really even out this other part, but oftentimes that's not the way to go.
Yeah, and I think as well, what makes it stand out here in particular is that the focus is quite of the the film is quite often the most in the dark. You have like the lizard guy, and he's like walking past and the booth and stuff, and it's like it's quite it makes it really kind of stand out, and really kind of like it kind of puts it more attention on it even more, the fact that the kind of vibrance of it all, you're paying attention to like the darkest part of it.
Mm-hmm. But one thing I kind of do want to say is that like when this came up in the playlist, I was thinking, man, this entry's great, I'm really enjoying this, this is really engaging, etc. But then if you asked me what was the plot, I'd be like, I don't know. Some cool stuff happened.
He's trying to head home to his, I guess, swamp sort of place. I guess the audio cue of the
the bog sound. I guess
frogs.
Yeah, maybe it's my own fault for not paying attention. But I don't even mean that in a bad way. Sometimes it's those brick films where you're like, man, that was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed watching that. But then it's like, what actually happened?
He found his way home.
That is actually, I would actually say that is almost I'd say that was a compliment in a way, because I feel like it's one of those sort of one of those sort of films where like you pick up on new things each time, and for a film that's so short, the fact that you keep like now I keep sort of sort of like noticing new things, that's actually really impressive. I think for such a short runtime.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the grungy space aesthetic, and this does quite a good job of that. It's all sort of workshop stuff. They're trying to fix up bits of high-tech equipment and
certainly
all the neon lights and everything.
All the character designs and the set designs, the lighting and the color schemes, it's all very nice and sci-fi, just very distinctive looking.
I think what I really like as well is like there's a lot of attention to detail, but I really love that shot when he's looking out the window and it focus pulls and you see the reflection of like this sort of satellite, like you're really kind of just expanding and really telling so much in such a short amount of time, and that kind of stuff is really cool. Like straight away you get that kind of context that he's like on some sort of spaceship.
Very well produced.
For sure. To loop back to something from earlier, the brick stuff wires are just barely visible, but they're not going to jump out at you.
In this instance, given it's already a space station which is looking a bit rough around the edges.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it actually fits, to be honest.
Yeah. So sometimes you can leave the wires in as part of the set design, and I think that's I think it works to the film's advantage here.
Because they're kind of wires,
Yeah.
It kind of in context of like the film, it can make sense. I think that's the main thing it has over something like the tack. You can sort of justify it on a set design way.
But I mean, even if you weren't trying to justify it as like sci-fi set design or anything, I feel like the way that they're, mostly hidden, but he's not going crazy trying to hide them or anything. I feel like it would work in pretty much any brick film to just have just a little bit of evidence, but not to a distracting degree.
I think it's also something that I'm sort of picking up on now. Again, there's quite a lot to talk about in this film, even though it's so short. But I really like how there is a variety in terms of like what the camera is doing, like in terms of like the depth of field, and because I don't know if we've actually touched on this in the podcast before, but like some brick films sort of try and go too much for the kind of like you can't see the like it's shallow just like all the time.
I mean, it seems like a very popular feeling among brick filmers that like, shallow depth of field instantly makes anything look cinematic, but they're often not using it in a sort of motivated way.
It can be a bit of a crutch, so you don't have to design the background quite so well.
That's true too.
But I feel like this film it kind of it shows a lot of the kind of how the scale of the sets quite well, I think.
Yeah.
So it definitely adds to it. It's quite purposeful in the way that the sort of the depth of field is used.
I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll move on to the sixth entry. How to Eat Your Grandpa in 60 Seconds by Sonjira.
We love to see it. So how do we start with this one?
Very classic Sonjira, yeah. Great stuff.
Yes.
I mean, I could try and, I guess, give like a plot summary.
For what it's worth.
The grandpa dies, and the son has an idea to dig up his grave with his son and eat him.
For some reason.
But then he then eats his son to retrieve his dead body, but then the twist turns out that they all turn to beans.
Hershey's beans, or I think that's the brand. In his liver for some reason, because of course that's
I think this is probably the hardest one to talk about. You just have to watch it.
Yeah, it
makes sense when you watch it. Somehow.
Yeah, it is surprisingly coherent when you watch it. There's this like I guess the main thing I'd say is like there's so much energy and there's like a lot going on all at once, and I love there's just so much like really impressive stuff in the film. I really love how like he kind of combines like different scales. It's really fun to watch the like frame by frame when he kind of like his the mouth kind of like goes over really big, and then he like
those brick built heads are horrifying in just the right way.
Yeah.
But Sonjira's animation it's so particular. Like he knows exactly what he's doing, even though if you were to describe it, it might often sound like amateurish, but it's like the most professional amateurism. Like
with the JPEGs over
he knows that it can be funnier to just alternate between two frames over and over again rather than doing anything more than that. But like, it's always chosen at just the right times, and they alternate just far enough between each other to make it the maximum funny.
Yeah, like throughout all of this, as crazy as it all may sound, there's so much effort.
Oh yeah, it takes a lot of effort to make sort of rougher or lower frame rate stuff look funny, look just the way you want it.
And like, I know that Sonjira's actually mentioned it quite a lot, that they've actually done like this, and I think Where's My Dog Pico have done really well on Newgrounds.
Yeah.
They've surpassed the views on YouTube like a lot, like by a lot, and I can really see why.
Oh yeah.
It's like it attracts the Newgrounds sort of like crowd, because I feel like it's quite reminiscent to a lot of like the kind of flash animation that I've seen.
Yeah,
on
I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of a video.
And definitely like the sense of humor as well. I think kind of it works there as well.
And it's cool to see this. Like I guess that he's using Blender for a lot of these shots. I think he's been like experimenting with Blender and trying out new styles.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like a merging of two different styles, like the Pico style, and then also this new sort of Blender style.
That seems.
And obviously, it's really nice whenever there's somebody who's using different styles, even if it's a style you've seen them use before. But when it pops up in the playlist, especially, it's like, oh, every other film was a normal type of brick film with figures walking around on the ground, but this one's totally different. So it's like, I don't want to say a breath of fresh air, because obviously I wouldn't be looking poorly on regular brick filmers doing things in the regular brick film style, but it's just a nice little novelty when there's another style in the playlist, especially or else if there's a Robuca brick film in the playlist as well. I think there was this year that was really good, the one with the Technique figures on the car. I really enjoyed seeing that one pop up in the playlist.
I think as well, like one of the things that I really like about Sonjira's like sense of humor is like, for some reason, like his like potty humor just works.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know why, but like there's that bit in like the very beginning where for like no reason at all, there's just a shot of the baby farting.
That was so funny.
Like, and I don't know why, it just makes me laugh so much. There's another one in I think it was in Head Loose, when they're interviewing these like heads, and one of them just vomits, and that's the interview. It's sort of crass humor, but it just works somehow.
It certainly works for me.
It's been approached from clearly a point of quite a good amount of talent. That definitely helps.
Yeah, actually that is true. I think it is partly like how kind of like, again, it always feels like effort has been put into it. So even like if it's just something that's like a really a stupid joke, it just works.
Also, the faces are cool. If there wasn't so much else going on, we probably would have mentioned the faces already. But the fact that he's doing these like crazy like drawn on faces the whole time.
Yeah, I noticed there's like a few weird shaped heads going on there as well. It just swaps out.
Mm-hmm.
And I
think those must be citizen brick heads, like oversized, and one of them's like really really tall at some point.
Yeah. It is a good one to break down frame by frame on some bits and go, what's going on?
Yeah.
Actually, breaking it down frame by frame as well, I think there's actually might be one of those citizen brick heads that's like two heads merged into one. I think he uses for literally like one frame.
Oh, it's a mere frame type thing. Oh, that's quite good.
Yeah.
You have to look
good.
back over that.
But you know, some of the actual like brick built stuff is cleverly designed as well. Again, it's sort of like the kind of thing that you hardly even register it when it's going by because it's just so fast paced. But yeah, like well, you mentioned the brick built heads that are horrifying in the right way, but also like that that shot when they're heading to the grave and there's like, you know, the funny sort of cartoon house and the clouds in the sky. It just all looks, you know, funny in a stylized way, or stylized in a funny way.
I think a lot of it as well, like, you know, there's like holding on to like frames and like, you know, sort of just like going, you know, repeating the same like 2 frames over and over again, and then there's also like shots that are just like so like they're like half a second, and I just think I don't know, but like, I think in terms of the editing and everything, it adds to the humor so much.
The editing and the
like,
sound design. I guess it feels like we've said a lot about this one, probably because I have this feeling that like not everyone would get it, but in my mind it's like it's all extremely even though it seems rough and crazy and all, it's like there's a lot of brains behind it. But it's hard to explain how or why.
I guess you've kind of talked about it before, in the kind of the humor that comes out of putting loads of effort into something that is like really stupid, and you know, like something I know, like I think in Chocolate Trouble 2 there's all that kind of like the amount of effort you put into like the set design for like literally one shot, just to add like a visual gag at the end and stuff like that. There's so much humor in that, like you know, just putting so much effort into something that's like just one very short joke.
Yeah, just that in itself.
But also just kind of, you know, I often get this feeling as if, you know, people who haven't been it's really hard to word this without sounding pretentious or without sounding like gatekeeping or whatever, but it's like people who haven't been around as long just think that smooth animation is the only good animation. But the kind of animation that Sonjira does, I find it to be more impressive and fun to watch.
It's definitely hardest to do right.
It's cartoony, isn't it? Like it's a very cartoony style, and really not going for like realism in like any sense, I suppose. But it's like really well animated though. That's the thing. Like, I think there's this kind of thing of like people think that smooth equals good, and it's true. Like there's some brilliant examples of smooth animation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But like it doesn't mean that anything that isn't smooth is bad. I think that's quite important to kind of point out. Like I think there are so many different styles of animation that you can do,
and they all use the same sort of underlying logic.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's still the principles. Like, you know, you look at like you know, like Sonjira's films. There's still a lot of principles in order for it to actually be effective. You know,
absolutely. The
timing and everything is really spot on, and I think it's just I think you just like enhance some elements more and sort of like maybe sort of remove the realism to some extent, but it kind of just like it all kind of, you know, kind of evens out, I think, you know.
But yes, I think we have talked about this one enough.
Yeah.
Trying to think of something different.
There's some fun visuals to kind of like loop in the podcast. So
true that.
But yeah, I guess we're going to move on to Deja Vu by MindGame.
It's nice to see Zach finally make a BRAWL entry that was actually on time.
Yes, I do really love like the look of the film. I think, isn't it, because the actual like you have like the original set from the Ben Andy films, the old ones.
Well, it's kind of the Bad Day set. Yeah, it's been updated. The
tree is fully grown, and you got like the sort of wider kind of like cityscape, and everything is like modernized. And like I haven't watched the Ben Andy for quite a while. I think I need to kind of like go back to them again. But like I really like how like I am sort of reminded of like the old set. Conceptually, I really like that idea of just going back to something, but it's like the time has passed in real time, you know.
Yeah, the tree has grown.
You snuck a few of the architecture sets in the background there. I'm pretty sure they didn't exist in 2007. But it just flashes out.
Well, I mean, it's referencing a film from 2005.
Oh, 2005, so yes. Well,
even further back.
It definitely feels like I need to know that when I kind of watch, I think it's Twin Peaks.
Yeah. Well, it's
I
sort
feel
of
like
David Lynch stuff in general.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean,
I need to
mostly
kind
I
of-
guess some of the Twin Peaks stuff is the closest point of reference.
I feel like I'll get it a lot more once I've like caught up on like Twin Peaks and that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of like references to it. If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I mean,
I haven't seen that, but I did go back and see his previous videos with the characters, and it made a bit more sense then.
yeah,
So it ties into his own stuff.
it's not so much directly referencing Twin Peaks, but yeah, it's directly referencing the earliest Ben and Andy films. So of course, like when I watched this first, I got it all straight away because I've been watching those since like 2007. I forgot almost that like other people wouldn't get it so much.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it still worked the first time around when I had no context behind it.
But even like ignoring any sort of questions about what it's referencing or whatnot, this is one of the tightest constructed entries. Like the editing, the pacing, the timing of everything, like between how the characters respond to each other with what they're saying, and like the sound design especially, it all just draws you in. All of those sort of elements that are harder to sort of quantify, I guess you could say. There's a lot going into this. And then the lighting as well. It's really good.
Yeah, I kind of love that totally nonplussed okay sort of response when he says that
exactly,
weird pretentious line
The
about
timing.
the future and the past.
It waits just long enough. Like it's all very particular.
Perfect, that one.
I think that is something as well. Like just like with Zach in general, is like he's such a great voice actor.
That's true too. Yeah.
So
Zach's
it always
probably.
works.
If I was to think of somebody who's like really good at all levels, Zach was probably the first name I think of.
And like always has been as well.
Yeah.
Like that's another thing as well.
Like there's plenty of big filmers plenty of big filmers with great animation who might have as good sound design or mightn't have as good like construction of like visual storytelling or film language or any of these sort of phrases we throw around, but like it seems like Zach is just sort of even across the board. Like he's just really good at everything.
Oh, and I really loved the lighting of the last scene, especially the sun shining into the window, and you got like the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
That's just that set design is so immaculate, and I just love that.
It's one of those things, if you looked at it without any knowledge of brick filming or set building or anything, you go, oh yeah, that's just a room, isn't it? But no, actually achieving that.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah,
A lot more work goes into making something just look like a room. Yeah.
for real. Yeah, I mean that's like something that I'm trying to think about more now. Is like when you look at like live action footage or like a room, like during the day, like the outside looks really bright, and there's like the indoors by comparison is always quite dark. That's something that you don't really. You're starting to see a lot more in brick films nowadays, but in the past you'd always have like very bright rooms and stuff.
Yeah,
Because you think that's how it should look,
Once I started to try to actually think about lighting a brick film properly, then I was just looking around in my house, seeing if the light was coming in a window, thinking to myself, like, the window looks really bright from inside, and the inside looks a lot darker in comparison. I was trying to look at how much does the light fall against the walls? Like, where does it how far does it go before it trails off, rather than just wanting to light everything even and flat. Perhaps we should move on to the fourth place.
Fourth place, The Return of Scooter Joe by soupmanjack. I mean, again, another really short entry, but there's just so much to like unpack, and there's so much to just like about it. Just like the the visuals, but like the animation, and like I love the speed of the bike kind of like smashing into the ground, and the physics of it is so good.
The physics of the wheel bouncing away after it crashes is fantastic.
It's a proper cartoony sort of video. And
Yeah.
And it's like the brick built fire. That wouldn't necessarily work in every video, but in this one it is the perfect choice. The way that he did it.
It is.
I love how it goes, it kind of tricks you into thinking it's going to have this, like, square aspect ratio, and it goes, psych. It's not doing, like, unlike many of the other entries.
This one might provide a good example of what we were talking about with Sonjira's entry, because, like, I really like that there's that one shot where there's, like, a a speaker, and the speaker is just alternating
yeah.
between two frames of just bigger and smaller to show that the sound is coming out. But like, it's particular about how it works, and it's funny because it's just alternating between two frames. But like, clearly this is a guy who knows everything about the, you know, the principles of animation. You can see that in all the other shots. But like, he just wanted it to look like that because it's funnier looking, and it works. But you know, you can see in like the wheel bouncing away, or yeah, like the bike flying through the air and holding at the top and stuff. You know, he knows what he's doing. But so you have to know what you're doing to choose when to go, you know, just alternate between two frames.
I think as well, like the VFX like added to it do kind of they add to it like quite a lot, like
the speed lines.
Yeah, like you've got it with the speaker, and then you've also got it when the camera like zooms in on his face, and you know, like that's some like creative editing that I think it enhances it, I think.
Yeah, really good distinctive look.
Yeah.
And again, I really like the kind of playing around with the scale as well. You got that kind of wide shot. And the like watching it again now, like frame by frame, like how perfectly it kind of it syncs up with, like, goes back straight to the the normal scale, and it just like, I don't know, it just works so well, like the editing of that.
It's very impressive, I think. Like, the first time I watched it, I just kind of, you know, just watched it as a watched it without thinking about how it's done and all, and I just didn't think about like the background. You know, when after he's crashed the bike and the background goes, there's a couple of layers. Like, one of them is, you know, smaller scale stuff, and then there's paper in the back. Or else when you see the TV at the start, and it's like a big scale TV, you know, bigger than minifig scale.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You got the micro scale, you got the macro scale, and you got just a standard minifig scale for something as well. It's done very well. It all fits together nicely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like it flows very well, and you're not distracted by the changing scales. I mean, okay, I guess the sort of the micro scale bike flying through the air is meant to be intentionally funny.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like the way the sound design cuts out sells it.
Yeah, you know that
music,
what it reminds me of. I don't know if you've seen the Grand Budapest Hotel. There's a shot in that when they're skiing, and it cuts to this very, very obviously like fake shot of, like, I don't know if it's like figures or something. It's very comedic. I know that
there are a few sort of comedic model shots in that.
Yeah, I get the idea.
Where similarly, like the sound design kind of scales back. And it sells the joke being like, this is a model.
But also as well, what I really love about like the set design is like that there's like different layers of like mountains and stuff. Like, you've got the closest are like, you know, brick built, and then you've got like cards, and you know, you've got different coloured card and stuff. I guess kind of similar, I guess, to your entry, the, you know, having using card and stuff, but like, there's like different, you know, you got Lego and then card, and then like there's several different layers of it. It's
I'm gonna say,
really
I
nice
think
sort of attention.
they managed to pull it off better in this one.
Oh no, I mean, I say that.
Well, in this one, it's kind of like you're not meant to see it, whereas I feel like in your one, it's more like you are meant to notice.
Well,
it.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Just to be clear, I like both for like, and I think they work both really well. I think.
I feel like they both work with how they're doing it.
Yeah, but I guess we should move on to Overdue.
Mm-hmm.
Overdue.
So yeah, this one is really interesting because I guess this is the first time that we've actually kind of like put together two films into one, I guess, for like BRAWL.
Well, you know, there was a bit of a question. I got the impression there was some discussion over, you know, how to judge this one. Like, is it two films or is it one? And it was kind of decided that, like, you couldn't possibly try and rank one above or below the other. Like, they're so intertwined, and you know, made at clearly they have to have been made at the same time on the same sets. And I'm not sure if some of the shots are actually the same animation from two different camera angles.
Well, I asked in the comments, and apparently, they had two cameras on some of the shots too.
So
with the globe going on in the background, and then him talking at the librarian's desk in the foreground. That's ones like that. It's actually there's two cameras following different characters.
So it's a weird sort of grey area, but I couldn't imagine trying to judge it as anything other than one film.
Yeah, I feel like even if you place like one next to the other, like you'd be like, well, which one's better? You know, I feel like you kind of had to put them together. But no, I really like what just like just on a conceptually, I just think it's such a really cool thing, seeing, and I've seen this done like I think of it as being like I imagine they probably took that from other things, but there's that episode of The Simpsons, the Trilogy of Error, and there's also Hoodwinked. The two things that come to mind for me when you have like these films where they're like the same story told through different perspectives, and you kind of are picking up new things about it each time. And I just love those kind of stories. Adding new context to something. I don't know. It's just it's not an easy thing to kind of come up with, because you're having to like think about both stories at once when you're doing it, and adding all these things that don't really make a lot of sense the first time around, but then you just it all comes together.
So I think it's quite fun to have people watching them in different orders to see if they take away different things from it.
Yeah, and it's certainly cool to just throw on the playlist, and then the first one ends and you think that's the end of the film, but then the next one begins and you're like, oh my god, it's the same film from a different perspective. That's crazy.
And I love the kind of like the jokes that kind of come out of it, like the fact because of like because it's like in two parts, and because you have to kind of watch it and know the full context for it to actually work. There's a lot of jokes that work really well because of it. Like when from the perspective of the guy in the bus is like, oh no, he's stolen that kid's bike, and then in the other version it's like, oh no, he's stolen that man's banana. Like,
yeah,
I found that really funny.
I do like that.
Yeah,
I also quite like the idea everything apparently costs 100 big ones. Both of them end up spending money in it. So in an individual video you go, oh yeah, yeah. But then you go, hang on a sec, what, a scooter costs the same amount as an Overdue library book?
Yeah,
it's great.
I do love that. I mean, I've seen that joke a few times in like Brickfilms, where it's like everything costs $100.
Yeah.
But I also the other gag I like is that one when he pays the kids 100 big ones for the bike, and then he just steals he just takes it from his hat and then buys the card. I thought that was funny.
Yes.
The set design in this is fantastic.
Yeah, that library set, the outside and the inside, both. That is very impressive. They put it together in the week, apparently. So
really?
I was like, what? You did 2 videos effectively, and you built all of this. Mind blown.
I absolutely would have assumed that it was just a set that they built just for the sake of it, like beforehand. But wow, it's really.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I would have assumed as well.
Really impressive if that was put together in the week.
And it's quite funny as well, because like it would have been impressive enough if that was just like, like the only set or whatever. But like, there's so many sets in the film, like in Joshua Nelson's entry, you've got like the shot of the bus just like driving past the city and stuff. Like, in the amount of buildings that are there in the background and stuff, I know like from if that was me that like it sometimes takes me like a day to do just a couple of buildings. So
yeah, same.
Yeah. It's always quite difficult having a moving vehicle. You've got so much more set to build, and yeah, well impressed with that.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the things I'm slowest at is finding the pieces and putting something together.
Making a brick film, especially when it's like big scale like that, it's 80% building the set and then 20% is the animation. But
well, more like 80% building the set, 15% setting up the shot, and then 5% animating.
True. But yeah, no, there's so much to like to admire about it. I think as well, like the library, it feels so kind of like complete, I guess. And you've got like, not only is the inside really good, but the outside's good as well. Like you've got.
Oh yeah.
Those statues at the front. There's I can only hope to make that, and within a week.
Yeah. I like small details. Whenever like anything in it, something I really love about like set design in general is just like just adding little bits, for like background and stuff. You've got those cards, and you've got like the carpet, the different books, and there's so much.
That's supposed to be the alpha team where we're using the library computers just off in the background. as you do.
Yeah.
One thing I did find a bit distracting was that like some of the lines of dialogue were like hard panned either left or right. I don't know if that was like a microphone thing or what, but like
Yeah,
you know, I guess if people have a microphone that only records one channel, you know, you could just look in Audacity or else in your editing program of just converting the audio to mono. I know in Vegas you can right click on the audio and you know find combine audio channels, and that basically just converts it to mono. So then there's no
yeah. I assume the rough edges are just obviously the limited time scale and the amount they're trying to pull off.
yeah. Although I mean, okay, maybe the stuff was panned intentionally because it's like following what sides of the frame it's on, and if that's the case, I think it's good practice to only do that to a tiny percentage. You know, not like full pan.
Yeah, I find I normally top out about 50%. There's no more than that ever.
Yeah.
But what I do like, I was going to say about, I guess going back onto like the concept side of things, I feel like it's kind of one of those sort of things where you feel as though the audience is kind of, in a way, rewarded by paying attention, if that makes sense. Like I guess like with the jokes and everything, is like, you know, I don't know, it's just fun in that way, I think. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it is certainly nice to have those jokes that, like, you know, with this sort of split storytelling, it's nice to use it with an actual purpose. So yeah, including those jokes where you watch both and get new meaning from it.
But yeah, they did a good job of actually splitting the story between it. So obviously in the side where it's following the guy who's being accused of murder, the only clip of the detective guy it shows is him washing his hands. So, you know, from that video you're entirely going, he's the murderer, he's got blood on his hands. And then it flips over to the other one, you watch that and go, oh wait, it's red paint for some reason. So there's lots of little clever things like that make it work very well as a two-part story.
Yeah.
They definitely lent into the concept.
Sure. I also think it's quite, there must have been some quite, you know, strategic kind of planning in terms of like when they actually released it, because they ended up being exactly next to each other in the playlist, and the playlist obviously is designed for the order is based on who
submission order.
Yeah, submission order. So it could have so easily have been like there could have been some, you know, one sandwich in between, you know, like, and that would have been really annoying. So
yeah, well, I guess you just got to make sure you're right there. So like, as soon as one person says they've hit send, then you hit send.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah. But yeah, should we head over to second place? I guess Joko, you could probably introduce it.
Oh, which one's that? Well, yes, Johnny Thunder and the Heart of Faber's Peak, which is a video by Joko, which is me.
And it came second place. Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
I mean, I'm still kind of blown away that people watch my videos, let alone that somehow I get ranked like this. So, wow, thanks for that, I guess, to the judges and well, yeah.
I actually wasn't aware that this series went back to 2015, I think.
Yeah, I sort of make all my videos kind of connected. I mean, I've got way more ideas than I have videos that have been released, so it's a case of maybe someday it will all make sense and tie together, but until such a point, you know, it's the same characters.
Yeah, and the voices are good, I think, throughout. The
The voice
voice
actors
is
did a
really
great
funny.
job. Big shout out to them. And like, obviously, I wrote most of the lines, but for Johnny Thunder, when he just exclaims random things, that was all coming out with it. Just shouts boomerang randomly, and yeah, it's probably not going to look good to most Australians, but
Well, I do like, and he's sort of just mumbling random stuff at like whatever he's doing. He's just sort of narrating. But yeah, it's nice. It's always nice to see a classic like Johnny Thunder adventure Rick film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get so many this year. They often do crop up again and again.
Yeah, true.
Of course, as time goes on, you're going to have less active people who feel a connection to old adventurers Lego.
It's already heading towards 20 years.
Yeah.
Not that it's in any way similar to Sonjira's entry, but in terms of like the pacing and the energy, I feel like there's some sort of I felt kind of similar vibes in that way. Like there's so much packed in such a short runtime. and I really like that about it.
Yeah, I always find that a really difficult balance to make because, you know, I've got a limited time to make it in, but I've got to try and get the pacing just about right that it all makes sense and that the jokes land well.
Yeah, because I mean, even if something is like less than 2 minutes long, there is the potential still for, you know, like a film to drag and not have like particularly sort of great pacing. And I think to do something like that, you know, it's like, I don't know, to have that amount of energy is I think that's a great thing to kind of like try and nail, you know.
Yeah, I mean the voice actors really bring a lot to that. I'm so pleased with how that all turned out.
But yeah,
because
the quick pace works really nicely.
They bring the energy, and then you can animate them doing all the crazy things. But if everyone's sounding completely deadpan, it would never work.
True,
that's true.
That is very true. I can imagine it going, you know, to the point where it's like the voice actors really didn't go with like your intentions, you know.
But for a sort of comedic, like, fun film like this, the fast pace is really good, and I feel like it's something that I struggled with for a long time, was this weird feeling of like, oh, I have to leave space, you know, between things or at the start and ends of shots or whatever, or else it's going to go by too fast and people won't pick up on the things. But then as I'm actually watching other people's Brick films, I do pick up on stuff that moves fast, and I like the pace. So I've been trying to sort of break out of bad habits for a while now.
Well, yeah, I've been approaching that from the other angle. I've been trying to keep it just about slow enough to understand. Okay. Cut it down. But yeah, I think that's how it ends up.
So what was the lighting setup like for the darker shots? Because it's a really nice, like, you know, subtle, bright rim light, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that was quite hard to achieve. I had a really big bright light, which I raised up on a slightly precarious stack of chairs and tables and books and things because I'd run out of proper stands. And that was quite far away but bright. And then obviously I had for the first time some little LEDs right in the set to bring out the glowing monster and like the fire in the hot air balloon and stuff like that.
So it was like the camera, since this is your first DSLR film, is it?
I've got the DSLR just right at the end of last year, and I've only just started getting the confidence to use it so much. So my first one, which was fully the DSLR, was in fact Brick 3024.
Okay.
Or 3024, however it would actually be pronounced. But this one, yeah, I was trying to push what I could do with it, trying to keep the active camera while using a DSLR.
Yeah. But I'm guessing it must have been like closed aperture combined with super bright light.
Yeah, I did keep having to mess around with different things. I ended up building the sets basically with the camera constantly set up to work out exactly how I could fit the background in and keep it light enough and stuff.
I think the lighting, especially when he's in the cave, you know, the monster, it's just it's so good. I really love that, like what you did with the, you know, the lights of, like, you know, the eyes and the sort of the jewel, you know. Yeah,
I'm really pleased with how that one came out. There's some things I look at in the above ground stuff. I'm like, if I had more time, I'd have done a lot of different things with the like color correction and stuff. But with the cave, yeah, that turned out exactly how I imagined it in my head. And
so did you, like with that, did you have like because there is like isn't like a spotlight on Johnny Thunder, isn't there? Like, because he's quite bright.
Yeah, there's a spotlight coming down from above, and I'd masked out just with a bit of card to make it go up right to the edge, so it didn't light up the Bionicle very much at all. And so the Bionicle was mostly just lit from his inner glowing eyes and the gem.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's always impressive in a Brick film when there's a sense of like vertical space, like the fact that he goes from, you know, the balloon up in the sky and then way down into the cave, and there's that nice shot where it's like the camera moves to looking down, looking at the top of his hat, and he keeps going down further.
Yeah, I'm surprised that came out so well. I kept, because obviously I had a very limited sized backdrop that was black, a big black blanket basically. So I tried all the different tricks of moving the camera around a little bit, moving him around a bit, and it still got the sense of him falling downwards, luckily. I did pull a few bricks up in front of the screen to make it look like the rocks were going past him, and yeah, I think that helped sell it.
Yeah, to keep
it was only until I put it into the software and took it for the final view through that I could see that it really all fit together properly.
Yeah, certainly that sequence is great.
I really like the physics of you know, Johnny Thunder when he's climbing around and the swinging on the rope and everything. It's all really well. It's all very well done. You know?
Yeah,
the shot near the end with the the claw like comes out and it's like sort of like trying to grab him. That really stood out to me as well. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I think I ended up doing that shot on the last morning of the animation. I was like, I do not want to cut this. This shot needs to happen, and I'm so glad I managed to include it. I was going to have a bit more of the destruction of the mountain surrounding him, but I think it turned out pretty well pacing wise. The amount I included.
Yeah, certainly a lot packed into a short runtime.
In terms of like the tone and the pacing, it kind of reminds me of like one of those sort of like classic Lego Studio kind of films, I guess actually maybe part of that is because of Johnny Thunder and stuff, but like it reminds me of one of those sort of films that Lego would have made themselves,
Oh, that's always good then, I guess.
Perhaps we must talk about the first place entry.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, the track of tracks, which is by me. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know how to actually start, really.
What were the main influences behind this film? Because it's in my mind, it's unlike the sort of general construction of Brickfilms. It seems more based in like films.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good way of starting it. Actually, so because in the past I've talked about like on like in previous BRAWL entries I've talked about like my influences with Brickfilms, but this time I really didn't take too many influences from Brickfilms. I was taking more influences from like films and TV stuff I've seen, and my biggest influences were shows like Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. Mostly, I guess, on a conceptual level. Within the world of like Breaking Bad, you have this guy who will you just phone him up and he'll kind of like sort of send you off and basically give you like a fake identity and sort of send you sort of far off into like thousands of miles away, where you'll never be found if you're on the loose or that kind of thing. And that kind of that was sort of a big inspiration for me in terms of like from the conceptual level, and yeah, I guess that was probably like one of my main influences. In terms of like the visuals and the way it was done, I was also inspired by like, particularly like Better Call Saul. There's these sequences in the beginning of like each season where you have him like it's like set like in the present when Better Call Saul is like a prequel to Breaking Bad, whereas like the opening sequences of the seasons are like set in like the present, and you see that he's like got this like fake identity where he's like hiding from his past life, and he's constantly like aware of like people watching him, and he's always like in fear of like being found, and they always use kind of like classic kind of 1940s 50s kind of music. And again, that was also a big influence for like the music choices, which is kind of a big part of the film. In terms of when I was coming up with the story, I really liked the idea of having someone who basically examining this way of like, so you've got this guy who he used to be a hitman, like a mercenary. Like, how could I show that he's basically the same person that he was before? Like, he's still killing for money, and I really like the idea of him being like this hunter that, and going to sort of a flashback of showing like he's basically doing the same thing. He's the same person, even though he's like trying to live this like other identity and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course. Again, I feel like I might have mentioned this with some of the previous entries. Like, what really stands out is the editing and the pacing and the framing, and just like it's like a whole bunch of qualities, and the sound design, a whole bunch of qualities all at once coming together to just make this nice cohesive whole film.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say the cinematography on this one is you can see it's inspired by actual sort of shows and films rather than Brickfilms, because it really takes a more cinematic sort of look to it. There's definitely a lot of intention behind it, I think.
Yeah, actually, that's another thing as well. Another influence which I think was actually kind of subconscious, because I was just watching a video the other day about I think it's Better Call Saul, the way that there were like certain sequences that kind of just like don't really show a whole lot, but they'll just show like the character going through. Like I think there's one sequence in where you got one of the characters and his car has been it's got like a tracker on it, and you spend like almost a whole episode him just sort of like dismantling his car, trying to find the device that's been tracking him. And then you see when he gets it, he then like breaks it apart, and he's examining the device and everything. And there's all this kind of stuff which usually would be like a 5-minute sequence. You just like show very basically, oh yeah, he dismantles the car, he finds it. But instead you go through that character's journey of kind of like going through these things that seem quite mundane, but they just add so much. You really feel like you're there with the character, if that makes sense, and it really adds so much to it. And I guess that is something that I was sort of subconsciously thinking about in terms of like the pacing of the film. There is actually a relatively slow pace, and a lot of it is quite atmospheric. I wanted to show things that like the stuff like he goes to the store and you see the guy kind of like giving him the money and stuff, and the way like that kind of stuff. I felt like it. You could have just like not shown that, but I feel like I don't know. I felt like it added to it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking for like just having him step back from the wall and then look up at it. I wouldn't necessarily have thought to include that step back to begin with, but that little extra bit, it gives it room to breathe, and it really fits the pace and tone.
And of course, telling the story visually, without dialogue, and largely through just how the shots are framed, etc., and not having to do it through like highly expressive animation. It's all very good practice for BRAWL or for tag, or sometimes cutting back to a further away shot, and like it's just the sound effects tell you what's happening.
Yeah,
people could take notes from this.
That was definitely something that I was thinking about, like the sound design. I really wanted to make sure that I had like a day of like editing, because I felt like I knew that the sound design was going to be a really important element to it, especially if it's something that is like there's no dialogue at all, and it's all very much based on atmosphere and quite kind of slow paced kind of stuff. And I really was thinking like without like good sound design, that really wouldn't have sell it at all. And I was definitely thinking about that when I was doing it. Like everything had to have some sort of sound.
Yeah, and that definitely adds to it. It's like the cutaways to the birds flapping across the woods. How do you actually animate those birds? They seem to like move their wings.
Yeah, so that's actually with again another I guess use of tack. It was just basically just that. I wanted originally to have like the cheese slope pieces in white, and that was my original plan, but it looked really bulky, especially because they're like small birds. So at first I just put the tack on there, and I was about to add I did try and add the slopes, but they kept falling off. And then I was just thinking to myself, actually, I don't actually need those slopes. I could just use tack, and yeah, that's what I ended up just using then.
Right.
It's really good.
Yeah, because that works really well in that context, because you don't want it to look humorous in that shot. And it just blended in nicely, and it made it feel like sort of natural.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that was another thing as well. Like, I think I was like alluding to this earlier, but like, there were definitely parts as I was kind of like coming up with the kind of story and everything. Certain scenes I had in my head that I was just like really excited to do. Like I think there was the flashback when you've got you cut back to him and he's about to shoot that guy, and then it cuts right back to like the present, and you just hear the gunshot of the and you get the idea that he shot the deer. That kind of stuff. I was just and it cuts sort of straight from the past back to the present, but it's like the same thing, like a match cut. That was another thing I was really excited about doing. And again, I guess there was also something that I was thinking about. I think it's something that you mentioned in the podcast with Chris before this, was creative use of, I guess, not showing like gore or anything. And I think especially with like BRAWL, you can't really show too much, and there's a lot in this that is kind of graphic if I actually showed it. Like I knew I didn't want to show like a deer being shot, and I didn't want to show him being eaten alive by a wolf. But I think cutting away to like the trees, and you've got this like wide shot. I think that makes it a lot more. You have this graphic idea in your head, and I think.
But of course, I also like thought that the two times it happens, it cuts to a similar sort of wide shot with one tree on the left side. So it was like again like a bit of a match cut, as if at the end to suggest the hunter has become the hunted.
Yeah.
So there's more to it than if you just saw him getting attacked.
As well, another thing that I was thinking about, like in the very beginning, is that I hint at like the death like straight away, because I show the stuffed wolf in the very beginning, and then I show the bear trap. And at first, I mean, what I really liked about that, I didn't want it to be obvious that what I was actually doing at that point. Because it serves...
Great use of Chekhov's gun there.
Yeah. Thank you.
It wasn't too in your face, but when you look back, yes, of course. It's all set up.
Yeah, because it does serve the purpose of, like, setting up who he is as a character before, like, obviously, like, oh, yeah, this is how he's going to die. You get the, oh, yeah, so he hunts animals, and, oh, yeah, like, there's, like, the trap, But then...
That's a good way of doing it, where you think you've gotten the meaning, but then it turns out later there's an additional something else was being set up that you didn't even think about.
Yeah, that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually originally toy with the idea of like having this shot of like the mob like sort of like catch up with him and they're the ones that kill him, but like theming wise, I felt like it was so much better having it like it was actually the animals to get him.
Yeah, hoisted by his own petard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It definitely improved the message. That was a very good choice, a very strong ending.
But another thing that I do, because I kind of like go between the 6 frame walk cycle and the 4 frame walk cycle. I definitely think that the 6 frame walk cycle works a lot better for like slow slow scenes when he's like walking slowly and stuff. And with the 4 frame walk cycle, I deliberately used it when he was like trying to walk quickly away from the trackers. And there's a shot where he's walking past and you've got like somebody else walking, and she's walking on the 6 frame walk cycle, but he's walking on the 4 frame walk cycle. I like the idea of doing that,
Yeah. These are the things that we think about when making the films. Nobody else.
They don't just all look the same. They've got their own character animation to them, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, just looking back at that shot now, I can see what you mean. Like, yeah, he has a more hurried walk, which obviously suits what's going on.
I guess another thing as well that I really liked about making this film, doing it in the 4:3, I think it added a lot to the visuals, but it also saved me quite a lot of time in terms of like set design, because I was looking at the clear, like the sort of like raw kind of image on Dragon Frame. Okay, so that's another thing as well. This is like my first brick film in Dragon Frame as well.
Had you done much testing with that beforehand, or was it?
No, like literally, I may have done like 1 or 2 tests, but this was like basically the first thing that I jumping straight into BRAWL. But I actually found it really user friendly and just easy to use, and I had the remote control as well, which just made it so much nicer. I really enjoyed using the remote control. But yeah, looking at the kind of like raw images, they're all at 16:9, and it's really funny seeing like the what's like beyond the frame, and you can see like where the lighting ends and the set kind of ends and stuff, and it's like I think it saved me quite a lot of time being able to just frame it that much smaller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. But of course, sometimes it works the other way. If you're shooting something that's more of a tall image, it can save you time if you're doing it in widescreen.
Yeah, that's true.
This is the thing where I was torn between going 16:9 or 4:3, because obviously at the beginning and end of mine, you've got a wide open shot of the landscape. But obviously, if you went a bit, you'd lose that if you went to 4:3. But the rest of it, when it's just in the balloon or whatever, maybe it would work better at 4:3. So it's something I haven't really thought about before now. And but yeah, obviously seeing lots of entries, including yours, it definitely makes sense to think about your aspect ratio. Don't just settle on the standard 16:9.
Yeah, I think for your film, I think it works really well being in 16:9 because you've got like shots like that wide with the at the beginning and the end, with the hot air balloon. I feel like actually it works really well in wide because it just like adds to the scale.
Yeah, that's my final decision because I really have struggled to get the set tall enough to make this hot air balloon still look really small, and you've got to zoom out as far as possible to make it look like seas against all these mountains. And yeah, the wide shot worked better for that in the end. But it's definitely something to think about in the future.
Yeah, there's certainly a noticeable trend in the BRAWL playlist. Is remarking on how many of them were 4x3. Yeah, so it's interesting to see people thinking about that.
Yeah, I feel like we've gone beyond that point now where the 4x3. Oh, that's the old way of doing it. Because I think even up until recently, I think it's been seen as being like, oh yeah, that's like the old like, is it? Yeah, 480p, kind of like thing.
Yeah. We've moved enough beyond that in time now that I guess it can become more of a stylistic change. So what's going to be interesting is with this whole more vertical video in some cases, whether people manage to pull that off in a convincing way.
Yeah, I wonder what'll be the first contest entry we get in a vertical aspect ratio.
Because again, that doesn't work so well on standard monitors, obviously.
I think that sometimes we always associate that with like social media and like TikTok and stuff. I guess that's the main reason why like maybe not as many people are doing it, because it doesn't we kind of like immediately think it's like not cinematic in a way. I don't know. But I can see that becoming something, actually.
Yeah, it'd be quite niche. Obviously, it'd have to be where framing actually makes sense for.
But like you'd then it like they'd be really tall, like the frame.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's somebody could put thought into it. Find a use for it where it made logical sense or it enhanced like what they were actually going for with the style.
See, that needs to happen in Manifest.
Yeah, there's a good idea. If anybody wants to make a last minute entry, I don't even know if this will come out in time for people to make a last minute entry, but.
Well, that's another thing. Is like with like Sonjira, like he plays around a lot with aspect ratios, including his entry in BRAWL, where like it's kind of done in a different kind of way, the aspect ratio. And I think I have heard him say like he never wants to film in 16:9 again.
Oh right.
So, yeah. But I would say that 4:3 is really good for like close-up shots. I really like what sort of profile, like shots of like people and how it looks, and stuff like the fireplace probably wouldn't have worked quite as well if it was in 16:9.
Yeah, I think we're beyond the point of people just thinking it as an old and inherently outdated, and now they're starting to realize that you can use it to frame things. It just gives it a different feel. And
on the flip side, you get even wider frames, like some cinematic things.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, that'd be used in very specific instances again, but yeah, it'd be nice to actually see that being something that's actually used in your animator's arsenal to make a choice on that.
I guess many years ago, the people who were going for a cinematic look sometimes would use like 235-1 or something. It seems like people are pushing the other way nowadays.
Just to kind of like say one more thing about my film, I don't know how easy it is to actually kind of like explain, but I had this sort of way of like actually animating it where I would kind of do the same action multiple times. Basically what I would do is I was kind of like influenced by like live action and how they how you sort of film things in that way, where I wouldn't like directly animate like the entire scene, like do like a master shot or anything like that, but for like the scene with in the store when the shop owner looks back at him and stuff like that and nods, I think I did that both in like a wide and I did that like in his like close-up shot, and I've just basically I'd do it so that I'd animate like the last action of one shot would be the first action of like the next shot,
so you can make the choice of exactly where you cut later when you had all the footage there.
Yeah. Another example was then you got the side shot of the shop owner, and I actually animated the entire action of him like he kind of picks up the note and he kind of like gestures at towards him. I did that entire shot, and then I just sort of like, and then I did the same shot again in the close up of the note, and I could then sort of pick the exact frame where I wanted to go. And what I really like to do in as an editor, I'm always thinking is I like cutting in like, you know, mid action, you know, because I think there's a way of like when you edit like mid action in between it,
so it blends better.
yeah, it kind of just like there's like the perfect frame, you know, in between where you kind of it just works properly. And I wanted to kind of do that like in brick film form. So that was a lot of fun.
And yeah, I feel like most brick filmers, you know, for a long time are always on that sort of like the shot starts, the action ends, the shot ends, repeat.
Yeah.
In general, it is probably better to try and take a few frames at the beginning and end of each shot that you could cut if needs be, just to leave that extra leeway.
Yeah, I think as well, like just being able to add, I mean, this is just something that I just think in general, like, you know, you end an action, you should always add an extra frame just in case you could loop those two, you know, like frames.
Yeah, I do that.
And just drag you know, just like the pacing just so that it flows better, you know, because you never know when something is too quick, you know.
It's a bit harder when you've got a moving background.
Yeah, true.
I was counting the minutes on my last shot. Obviously, I had to move all the mountains with it. It's like, I want it a bit longer. This takes time.
I'm actually working on a recreation of Toy Story 2. Well, actually, I have finished animating it now, and it's like this big collaboration, and I animated the scene where the traffic cones are walking past the street, and there was a shot where I had to pan and also animate like 6 cones and also like traffic all at once, and that was that was really exhausting. It took me about 4 hours to animate like 2 seconds of animation.
Yeah, it does get like that.
And it's like,
and I always find you've got to move the things before you move the camera, otherwise you forget. You haven't necessarily noticed one of them's moved, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, it's so annoying, and like
so much to keep track of.
And like I remember as well, it's like you have the shot is like right in the middle of the road, so the cars are having to kind of like just like appear, but you've got to make sure that the cars don't sort of show up too early, because that means that they're going to like reach the cones before the end of the shot, and you've got to make sure that...
Yeah, it's the planning ahead as well.
Yeah, so that was a nightmare to do.
But recreating a scene from a film is probably a good way to study the editing of a film.
Yeah, actually that is true. Again, you know, you kind of sort of see how like it cuts in between actions and all that kind of stuff, and it also helps as well with how you animate things outside of like a brick film influence. There was a shot that I did with the car, there's like a car crashing into another car, and they're kind of like going sort of backwards, and it's quite a hard thing to actually animate, and you have to really kind of study like the reference footage really well to kind of like frame by frame to kind of like be able to pick it up. And also like cars like sort of drifting is another thing that's actually really hard to do well. So having that, like using that kind of the original footage as a reference, and not really thinking about like other brick film examples and stuff, allows you to kind of expand, I guess, in a way, you know.
Yeah, that's good, because then obviously you can take that you found in basing it on the exact footage and use that in other animations out of context, and you've just expanded your repertoire of sort of actions you can faithfully reproduce.
I'm kind of thinking, I'm looking at the time now of the recording.
Yeah.
Oh god. Send that late.
Perhaps we should think about wrapping things up.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like I always say, it's been such a great chat, and you can very easily lose track of like the amount of time that we've been talking, and you know, just keep going. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking about my film. I'm just.
But of course, yeah, it is very easy to talk a lot about your own film.
I think especially when you've got like more than one person like film, you know, you're talking not just about your own film but like somebody else, so it's bound to kind of like, you know, end up talking about like, you know, minute details and stuff, and
for sure.
But But no, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really great conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Yes.
I've seen the podcast while I've been animating before, and I never really thought I'd actually be the one on it. So it's an interesting side of things.
I think you've been on our radar for quite a long time in terms of like guests. So yeah, it's great to finally have an opportunity to talk to you.
Well, it's been good.
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to the manifest entry.
So am I. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's. It's going to be quite an interesting list of entries.
I certainly
sure.
hope so.
I mean, we're both judges, which is actually quite funny as well.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll hand you this mysterious piece of paper.
But yeah, thanks for coming on.
See you around.
Bye.